For centuries, Western civilization has engaged in a profound, collective act of psychological self-deception regarding the fundamental nature of the divine. Imagine stepping into the grand, echoing nave of a centuries-old cathedral. The air is heavy with the metallic scent of melting candle wax and ancient myrrh. You walk down the central aisle, your footsteps reverberating against the cold stone, and you look up at the magnificent vaulted ceilings, seeking comfort from the harsh realities of the world. There, painted in vibrant, luminous oils, and carved into smooth white marble, you see him. Archangel Michael, the supreme commander of the heavenly host, is routinely depicted as a handsome, golden-haired warrior clad in polished Roman armor, striking a balletic pose of effortless victory over a literal, physical serpent. It is an image that inspires hope, safety, and a deep sense of aesthetic grace. But this pacifying simulacrum is a lie born of absolute terror. Driven by an innate biological imperative to secure existential comfort, the human cultural consciousness has systematically sanitized the architecture of the heavenly realms. Over generations, we have taken the most formidable, incomprehensible, and alien entities in the cosmos and violently reduced them down into palatable, easily digestible, humanized icons. Archangel Michael, the Viceroy of Heaven and the ultimate enforcer of divine will, has been uniquely subjected to this aggressive domestication. But a chilling question remains hovering in the sanctuary. If this beautiful golden warrior is merely a mask, what unspeakable horror is hiding beneath it? And what is the human mind trying so desperately to block out? To understand the true nature of this cosmic entity, we must first examine the elaborate psychological cage we built to contain him. The iconographic evolution of Saint Michael reveals a highly systematic campaign to domesticate the divine, rendering the fundamentally incomprehensible into something entirely approachable. As the Dark Ages transitioned into the Renaissance and the Baroque periods, this theological sanitization reached its absolute zenith through the hyperhumanization of the warrior archetype. Consider Guido Reni's 1635 masterpiece, The Archangel Michael Defeating Satan, housed in the quiet church of Santa Maria della Concezione in Rome. When you stand before this massive canvas, you are immediately overwhelmed by its resplendently theatrical nature, characterized by an aesthetic grace that renders a catastrophic, multi-dimensional cosmic war as a serene, almost bloodless ballet. Michael is depicted wearing the stylized, vibrantly colored garb of a mortal Roman soldier, complete with a flowing crimson cape and an impeccably calm porcelain face, entirely devoid of any malice, physical effort, or divine wrath. He stands effortlessly upon the head of a vanquished Satan, who is himself aggressively humanized, bearing a grotesquely grimacing human face rather than a sprawling draconic form. Raphael's high Renaissance work from 1518 similarly anchors the archangel in the humanist ideals of Florence, showing him descending from the clouds in gleaming classical armor, wielding a traditional spear, and acting as a symbol of rational Christian virtue. These legendary artists utilized a highly deliberate visual sanitization to effectively mask the trauma of divine violence, turning an event of metaphysical erasure into a highly romanticized triumph of light over dark. Even in classical literature, John Milton's epic Paradise Lost permanently solidified this anthropomorphic military identity, characterizing Michael as a larger-than-life Greco-Roman general wielding a flaming sword, engaging in comprehensible human dialogue and pedagogical interaction. We built him a body of flesh, we gave him a sword of forged steel, and we gave him a face that could feel pity, all to avoid facing the reality of his original biblical description. But why did human culture so desperately need to paint a familiar human face on the commander of the archangels? The answer lies deep within the chilling intersection of evolutionary biology and terror management theory. Human beings suffer from a unique and entirely debilitating psychological conflict that no other creature on Earth experiences. We possess a primal, hardwired biological imperative to survive at all costs. Yet our advanced cognitive capacity forces us to consciously realize that our death is absolute, inevitable, and wildly unpredictable. This haunting realization generates an underlying, paralyzing existential terror that hums constantly in the background of the human psyche, threatening to drive us entirely mad if left unchecked. To manage this crushing terror, humans desperately construct and immerse themselves in cultural worldviews and religious belief systems that offer either literal immortality in a golden afterlife or symbolic immortality through legacy. However, for these religious frameworks to function as effective anxiety buffers, the deities and protectors residing within them must be psychologically comprehensible to the fragile mortal mind. This is where anthropomorphism, the cognitive attribution of human physiological and psychological properties to non-human entities, becomes our ultimate survival tool. While abstract theological doctrines clearly define angels as omnipresent, immaterial, and existing entirely outside of the linear flow of time, human cognition forcefully defaults to conceptualizing them as relatable agents with human-like minds, predictable motivations, and physical forms. By projecting a human face onto Archangel Michael, humanity constructs a vital psychological shield against the dark, freezing void of the unknown. We quietly tell ourselves that if the ultimate guardian of humanity is a handsome, emotional, empathetic human warrior, then the universe itself must be governed by familiar, comforting human values. We convince ourselves that the cosmos cares about us in a way we can readily understand and negotiate with. This invisible psychological shield is the only thing standing between our fragile, everyday sanity and utter cognitive ruin. To face the true reality of the divine, a reality that is vast, utterly indifferent to human physiological constraints, and terrifyingly alien, would permanently shatter the psychological security provided by our carefully constructed cultural worldviews, exposing us to raw, unfiltered, existential dread. The over-anthropomorphization of the heavenly host drastically diminishes the terrifying divine mystery, confining the limitless, crushing weight of the cosmos into a manageable, anthropocentric box. We actively force the infinite into a biologically recognizable and aesthetically pleasing human silhouette. We frame the most devastating cosmic conflicts within the comprehensible earthly rules of physics and physical warfare. But the canvas of history is beginning to blister under the intense heat of scrutiny. The beautiful Renaissance oil paints are starting to melt, bubble, and burn away under the searing radiation of an ancient, terrifying truth. As the soothing image of the golden-haired warrior dissolves into ash, the underlying reality threatens to reveal chaotic, shifting geometric patterns, non-Euclidean structures, and a blinding, radioactive light that our mortal eyes were never evolved to perceive. The comforting illusion is ending right now, and we are about to descend into the primordial origins of a being that utterly defies all human logic. The protective mask is finally coming off, and what waits beneath it is a cosmic mechanism that will cause the human mind to buckle under the sheer, incomprehensible gravity of its mere existence. Once the soothing psychological shield of anthropomorphism is finally violently discarded, the raw, unfiltered descriptions of the heavenly host found in ancient Abrahamic texts can truly be examined. Close your eyes and imagine the immediate, devastating sensory overload. The comforting scent of cathedral incense vanishes, instantly replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of ozone and the suffocating heat of 1,000 dying suns. The resulting anatomy of these divine entities is one of pure, unadulterated, cosmic horror, manifesting as a non-Euclidean nightmare of intersecting dimensions, infinite surveillance, and burning metals that fundamentally assaults the biological limits of human perception. While Archangel Michael is specifically named as a chief prince within this heavenly host, the terrifying environment he commands and the forms of the highest celestial beings around him permanently establish the baseline for divine anatomy. To even attempt to gaze upon Michael is to gaze upon the absolute apex of this terrifying, alien morphology. We must first look at his immediate subordinates to grasp the scale of the horror. The prophet Ezekiel's ancient visions reveal the divine chariot throne, attended by beings of incomprehensible structure. These are the Ophanim, and they are not humanoids with feathered wings. They are colossal, autonomous, floating gyres, intersecting wheels within wheels that sparkle with a terrifying, cold brilliance of beryl and topaz. Picture massive, grinding structures defying all known gravity, possessing high, awesome rims that are completely covered in unblinking eyes, granting them a suffocating, omniscient perception delegated directly from God. Beside them move the cherubim, living creatures bearing 4 distinct faces of a human, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, their straight legs ending in hooves that sparkle like burnished bronze. They move with a terrifying synchronicity, darting violently like flashes of lightning, moving in any direction simultaneously without ever turning their bodies. But the nightmare ascends further as we approach the highest order of the angelic choirs, the seraphim, whose very name translates literally to the burning ones, entities of overwhelming fire and devastating, lethal majesty. The prophet Isaiah described these beings with 6 wings, utilizing them to shield themselves from the absolute glory of God, or perhaps, more chillingly, to shield fragile mortals from their own terrifying visage. In the book of Revelation, these living creatures are situated around a sea of glass resembling crystal, completely full of eyes in front, behind, all around, and inside, perpetually chanting without a single moment of rest, day or night. Now, synthesize this horrifying baseline and apply it to the Supreme Commander himself. In esoteric and apocryphal literature, such as the first book of Enoch and the mysticism of early Judaism, Archangel Michael and his peers are elevated far beyond mere messengers. They are absolutely not described as mortal men holding steel swords, but as terrifying, massive entities composed entirely of fire, lightning, and burning brass. They exist in multi-layered heavens, guarded by impenetrable flames, specifically tasked with executing the apocalyptic, violent destruction of corrupted entities. In Talmudic and Midrashic literature, while Gabriel possesses a face like lightning and eyes like flaming torches, Michael serves as the supreme commander of this terrifying mechanical host. sometimes associated with the freezing elements of water and snow, or conversely, searing, fiery flame. In the Zohar, Michael is the high priest of the celestial realm. His color is a blinding, radioactive white, and he embodies the awe and absolute mercy of the Creator. Therefore, if Archangel Michael is the supreme warrior of this impossible hierarchy, his true, unfiltered form must be an amalgamation of these hyperdimensional traits. He is a shifting, non-Euclidean construct of blinding white light, infinite perception through countless unblinking eyes, and destructive energy of fire and brass, wholly and utterly devoid of a single, comforting human silhouette. When a fragile, mortal brain, biologically evolved over millions of years to process simple, three-dimensional space and standard terrestrial biological forms, attempts to process a higher dimensional entity composed of intersecting, eye-covered wheels and burning brass, the immediate result is never spiritual comfort, but profound, catastrophic psychological devastation. The German theologian Rudolf Otto codified this visceral, unavoidable reaction in his seminal 1917 work, defining the raw, non-rational presence of the divine as a fearful and fascinating mystery. This horrific experience triggers what Otto called the mysterium, where the entity is recognized as wholly other, existing entirely outside the rigid bounds of human experience, physical space, linear time, and basic rationality. It simply cannot be understood by our primitive neural pathways. It can only be encountered, leaving the mortal observer paralyzed in a state of blank wonder and drooling cognitive stupor. This immediately gives way to the tremendum, an overwhelming, suffocating sense of terror, demonic dread, and paralyzing awe. The encounter violently confronts the mortal with absolute unapproachability and overpowering majesty, reducing the human to a visceral, agonizing realization of their own complete nothingness and profound physical fragility. Yet, amidst this mind-rending terror, there is the fascinans, an irresistible, magnetic attraction that violently pulls the observer toward it in a state of entranced fascination, paradoxically threatening to completely obliterate the self. In modern clinical philosophy, an encounter with such an impossible being triggers what is known as ontological shock. This is not merely extreme fear or a standard panic attack. It is the complete, irreversible, catastrophic dissolution of a person's foundational framework for what is real. When a human directly witnesses a severe violation of causality, materiality, and geometry, such as an angel shifting form fluidly through 4 dimensions, or communicating telepathically directly into the nervous system while bypassing language entirely, their categorical systems for understanding the universe instantly collapse. The mortal brain simply lacks the neural architecture to process the data. There are standard medical protocols to treat physical trauma, but there is no protocol on Earth for an experience that proves the universe operates on fundamentally alien rules, rendering the victim's entire life a placid island of ignorance. Therefore, the famous biblical command so frequently uttered by these entities, "Do not be afraid," is absolutely not a gentle, grandfatherly reassurance. It is a desperate, biologically necessary medical warning screamed to a mortal mind teetering on the absolute brink of fracturing permanently into divine madness upon perceiving the raw, unfiltered mechanism of creation. The sheer scale, jagged geometry, and radiating energy of his true presence are quite literally biologically toxic to human sanity. But if his physical form is a weapon designed to annihilate human perception, the architecture of his mind represents a threat far colder and infinitely more absolute. If the physical manifestation of Archangel Michael is a twisting, non-Euclidean nightmare of hypergeometry that permanently shatters the mortal eye, his internal psychology, the very architecture of his mind, and his deepest motivations, is exponentially more alien and terrifying. To even begin to comprehend how the supreme commander of the heavenly host truly operates, you must violently forcibly discard every single human concept of emotion, hesitation, moral grappling, and empathetic connection. Think deeply about what it means to be human in a moment of crisis. When you are faced with a monumental decision, you feel the physical, agonizing weight of it in your chest. Your heart rate elevates, cold sweat beads on your forehead, and your mind races through a painfully slow sequence of logical steps. You doubt yourself. You weigh the disastrous consequences of failure. You feel the sharp, bitter sting of fear or the warm, illogical pull of compassion. This deeply relatable, structurally flawed process is what ancient theologians call discursive reasoning, and it is intrinsically tied to the inescapable fact that we possess fragile physical bodies and highly reactive nervous systems. We learn and process reality by moving sequentially from one premise to another, painstakingly gathering flawed sensory data through our physical organs and endlessly debating internal contradictions over the relentless passage of time. But the definitive theological blueprint for the angelic mind, painstakingly outlined in the intricate scholastic framework of St. Thomas Aquinas's Summa Theologica, radically and permanently separates this clumsy human consciousness from the blinding reality of angelic consciousness. Angels, lacking physical bodies, nervous systems, and sensory organs of any kind, absolutely do not think in this slow, time-bound biological manner. They do not learn, they do not deduce, and they do not investigate mysteries. They possess what Aquinas defines as pure intellect, meaning they comprehend the absolute totality of reality through a simple, flawless, and immediate intuition. When Michael was forged in the primordial fires of the cosmos, he was instantaneously infused by God with all the intelligible knowledge he would ever need for eternity. Therefore, when Archangel Michael looks upon a situation or a mortal soul, there is absolutely no internal monologue, no anxious weighing of strategic options, and not a single fleeting shadow of doubt. He processes the absolute objective truth of the universe instantaneously and perfectly, executing his judgment in a manner infinitely nobler, faster, and more mathematically perfect than any human cognitive process could ever hope to achieve. This complete, terrifying absence of discursive thought leads to an even more horrifying realization regarding his capacity for feeling. Because human beings are forever tethered to fragile physical forms of meat and bone, we are constantly driven, manipulated, and enslaved by what Aquinas termed the sensitive appetite. Our entire existence is largely dictated by our concupiscible desires, such as lusts, joys, and physical pleasures, and our irascible instincts, such as blinding anger, paralyzing fear, desperate courage, and aggressive survival mechanisms. But Archangel Michael has no physical body. Therefore, he possesses absolutely zero sensitive appetites. He is biologically, structurally, and spiritually incapable of feeling human emotion. Let the sheer gravity of that sink into your mind for a moment. He does not feel righteous anger toward the demons he eternally slaughters. He does not feel a warm, comforting pity, nor does he possess empathetic love for the fragile humans he supposedly guards. He cannot experience fear in the face of the abyss, nor can he experience sorrow, regret, or emotional passion of any kind. His only driving internal force, the sole roaring engine powering this colossal cosmic machine, is the absolute will. In this chilling scholastic framework, the will of an archangel is a higher, purely intellectual appetite that fiercely desires only one singular thing: the ultimate good, which translates directly to the flawless, unfiltered execution of God's divine mathematical order. The virtues we desperately project onto him to make ourselves feel safe, such as charity or heroic fortitude, do not exist within his mind as warm, comforting feelings, but rather as simple, immutable, and unbreakable acts of his absolute will, mechanically carrying out the preordained divine plan. And here is the most terrifying aspect of this angelic absolute will. Once an angel's choice is made, it is locked eternally in the fabric of reality. An angel cannot change its mind under any circumstances. Archangel Michael cannot experience a sudden change of heart. He cannot suffer the bitter sting of remorse for his devastating actions. And he cannot be swayed by a desperate, tearful human plea for mercy. The very substance of an angel is essentially its action. To understand the universe and to will that understanding into reality are the fundamental, inseparable movements of his terrifying existence. Viewing Michael strictly through this cold, unyielding lens of Thomistic theology forces a terrifying, paradigm-shattering recontextualization of his entire character. He is absolutely not a hero in any recognizable human sense of the word. Heroes are explicitly defined by their mortal flaws, by overcoming paralyzing fear, by struggling endlessly with moral ambiguity, and by acting out of passionate love or burning righteous anger. Michael is none of these things. He is an emotionless automaton of God. He is a living, breathing algorithm constructed of blinding light, infinite, unblinking eyes, and scorching fire. He functions not as a compassionate, grandfatherly guardian, but as a relentless cosmic immune system, programmed with absolute, terrifying knowledge and an absolute, unbending will to eradicate anything and anyone that threatens the purity of the divine order. When Michael acts, it is not a moment of glorious, cinematic triumph accompanied by soaring music. It is the cold, rhythmic, mechanical execution of a preordained cosmic directive. He strikes down the ancient enemies of heaven without a single drop of hatred, operating with the chilling, mathematical precision of an antivirus software, quietly and efficiently deleting a corrupted file from a massive mainframe. Imagine an executioner's enormous, heavy steel blade falling at the exact same speed, the exact same angle, and the exact same lethal trajectory every single time, without fail, without pause, without a single breath of hesitation. Imagine a pristine surgical scalpel excising diseased, rotting tissue without malice, without second thoughts, and without celebration. That is the true nature of Archangel Michael. If a human being, regardless of their pure intentions, their innocence, or their agonizing suffering, happens to stand in the way of that divine directive, Michael will obliterate them with the exact same flawless, abyssal indifference. You must permanently strip away the passionate warrior trope from your mind and realize that we are dealing with an unstoppable force of nature, a sentient, hyperdimensional weapon that cannot be bargained with, cannot be reasoned with, and cannot be appealed to emotionally. And this chilling realization regarding the cold engine of his obedience perfectly sets the stage for the most catastrophic demonstration of his power, an event that proves just how violently this executioner can cleanse the heavens. The full, terrifying potential of Archangel Michael's absolute will is flawlessly demonstrated in his most famous biblical act, an event we naively call the war in heaven. By actively viewing this cataclysmic cosmic event through the highly specific lens of esoteric theology and the mechanical angelology established by ancient scholars, the conflict transforms dramatically from a simple mythological sword fight into a staggering, incomprehensible event of metaphysical erasure. Traditional religious iconography desperately attempts to depict this as a literal physical clash of arms, a completely humanized battle of sharpened swords, heavy metal shields, and exhaustive physical exertion. But esoteric and metaphysical interpretations, such as those deeply embedded within specific strains of mystical theology, offer a reality that is far more abstract and profoundly chilling. In these ancient traditions, heaven is absolutely not a physical geographical kingdom paved with streets of gold and pearly gates, but rather an infinitely complex state of conscious harmony and absolute, unbroken divine order. Now, try to visualize this flawless cosmic machinery humming in perfect synchronization when suddenly a microscopic vibration of discord is introduced. Satan, or Lucifer, is interpreted in this framework not merely as a rebellious humanoid figure sporting leathery bat-like wings, but rather as an abstract idea of power that fundamentally became corrupted. It was a deeply discordant, jagged thought that forcefully entered the pristine divine consciousness, aggressively asserting selfish self-will over the harmonic whole of creation. If you view the universe as an infinitely vast, interconnected digital system, flawlessly sustained by the very mind of God, then Lucifer represents a fatal, catastrophic glitch. He became a self-replicating, metaphysical virus of selfishness and profound disruption, rapidly threatening to destabilize the absolute harmony of the entire celestial network. Therefore, when the Book of Revelation outlines this ultimate cosmic conflict, stating that Michael and his angels went forth to war with the dragon, we must completely erase our preconceived notions of heroic, bloody combat. The war in heaven was absolutely not fought with physical, earthly weapons of any kind. It was a devastating, instantaneous act of metaphysical and mechanical erasure. Archangel Michael did not strap on a breastplate or scream a battle cry. Acting as the ultimate, unfeeling system administrator of the cosmos, he simply deployed his absolute, terrifying will to violently quarantine and meticulously excise the corrupted code from the higher dimensions. He did not defeat Satan in a prolonged, grueling contest of physical strength, strategic martial prowess, or passionate willpower. Instead, Michael coldly and efficiently executed a catastrophic firewall protocol that fundamentally removed the dragon's access to the celestial mainframe. Imagine the sheer sensory horror of this metaphysical erasure. A visual motif of beautiful celestial bodies and classical divine structures violently glitching, silently tearing apart at the subatomic level, as the mathematical reality of Lucifer was violently formatted and aggressively cast down into the lower, denser dimension of Earth. The flaming sword, so frequently and beautifully depicted in Renaissance art, is not a piece of sharpened steel at all, but rather a crude, desperate human metaphor for a blinding, radioactive ontological scalpel that permanently severs a lesser being's fundamental connection to divine reality. It is a beam of pure, annihilating energy that disintegrates matter and spirit alike, leaving nothing behind but shadows permanently burned into the metaphysical stone. Terrifying remnants of Michael's obliterating, radioactive presence. He unmade the anomaly with the exact same level of emotional investment as a machine stamping out a defective piece of sheet metal. This highly esoteric, mechanical interpretation highlights a profound and terrifying duality regarding the true nature of Archangel Michael that humanity refuses to accept. Throughout history, he is widely and passionately celebrated as the great benevolent protector of humanity, the supreme guardian prince of Israel, and the mighty, unwavering champion of the global church. However, this brings us to a chilling realization that strips away the last remaining shreds of our psychological comfort. The exact same absolute mechanical obedience and purely intuitive intellect that make him a flawless, unstoppable protector would also instantly make him humanity's most efficient and merciless exterminator. Because Michael possesses absolutely no human emotion, no capacity for empathy, and no independent moral compass existing outside of the absolute, pre-programmed will of God, he is entirely, breathtakingly indifferent to human suffering and physical agony. Let the cold reality of that statement wash over you. He does not spread his wings to protect human beings because he harbors a warm, grandfatherly love for us in his heart. He protects us simply and exclusively because it is currently the algorithm's divine, unbending command. We are merely lines of code he is currently instructed to maintain. But what happens when the code changes? If the overarching, incomprehensible logic of the infinite Creator were to suddenly determine that humanity itself had become a corrupted code, a discordant, destructive virus disrupting the harmonic balance of creation, much like Lucifer did, Michael's response would be instantaneous and completely devoid of mercy. He would seamlessly pivot from guardian to destroyer, executing a complete global extinction protocol without a single fleeting moment of hesitation, regret, or sorrow. He would not weep for us. He would not plead with the Creator on our behalf, and he would not pause to listen to our desperate, screaming prayers. He would simply erase us. And we do not have to look far to find stark, horrifying, biblical precedent for this remorseless, terrifying efficiency. Deep within the ancient texts of the Old Testament, an entity explicitly identified as an angel of the Lord, a title very often interpreted in these massive military contexts as either Michael himself or a subordinate entity operating under his direct, unyielding command, demonstrates this exact capacity for localized erasure. Picture the sprawling, massive camp of the Assyrian army aggressively surrounding the walls of Jerusalem, a formidable force of seasoned human soldiers sleeping in their tents, breathing the cool night air, dreaming of their homes, their families, and the impending victory. In the dead of night, this hyper-dimensional mechanism of God descends upon them. There were no clashing swords, no alarms sounded, and absolutely no battle fought. In a single, silent, terrifying night, this angelic entity effortlessly slaughters 185,000 mortal soldiers to protect the city. It was not a chaotic military engagement. It was a systematic, flawless extermination. The angels swept through the camp like a silent, invisible wave of sudden death, snapping the biological tethers of over 100,000 human souls with mathematical precision, leaving behind a silent, sprawling graveyard of perfectly intact bodies that simply forgot how to live. This localized erasure perfectly exemplifies the absolute, mind-shattering terror of the divine machine. The chilling realization that our supposedly loving, golden-haired guardian possesses the immense capability and the completely unfeeling, algorithmic willingness to effortlessly inflict mass death completely shatters any comforting, naive illusions we might harbor of a benevolent, deeply caring universe. We are forced to acknowledge the extreme fragility of humanity's precarious position in the cosmos. We are carefully protected only for as long as we are explicitly permitted to exist by the cold, unfathomable logic of the supreme system. Archangel Michael is indeed our grand safety net, but he is also a heavy, razor-sharp guillotine suspended by a single, invisible thread, poised directly above the collective neck of the human race. And as we stand in the shadow of this towering, emotionless engine of absolute obedience, the final, terrifying psychological implications of his existence are about to come crashing down upon us. When the exhaustive research data is fully synthesized, when the psychological deception of anthropomorphism is finally stripped away to reveal the non-Euclidean hypergeometry of the celestial host, and when we understand the emotionless intellect of the angelic mind and its terrifying capacity for total metaphysical erasure, the resulting portrait of Archangel Michael aligns perfectly with the darkest depths of cosmic horror. In the early 20th century, the author H.P. Lovecraft pioneered a literary and philosophical movement known as cosmicism, entirely based on the fundamental premise that the universe is vast, uncaring, and completely indifferent to human existence, morality, or emotion. In Lovecraftian horror, humanity is nothing more than an insignificant speck, a negligible and temporary race, and encountering the ancient slumbering gods of the cosmos induces permanent madness simply because it proves our utter irrelevance in the grand, sweeping scheme of the universe. However, the rigorous application of this cosmic horror framework to ancient Abrahamic theology generates a level of psychological terror that arguably surpasses Lovecraft's darkest nightmares of indifferentism. In the Lovecraftian mythos, the monstrous gods simply do not care about us. We are merely insects to be accidentally stepped on, and finding a strange, bleak comfort in our total lack of importance is at least a perverse possibility. But in the realm of theological cosmic horror, the sheer, paralyzing terror stems from the inescapable, searing fact that the divine actually does care. It cares profoundly, but it cares on a mathematical scale so absolute, so blindingly perfect, and so completely incomprehensible to the human nervous system that its focused attention feels exactly like total annihilation. Archangel Michael is the ultimate apex agent of this terrifying theological paradigm. He represents a universe where absolute objective morality does indeed exist, but it is ruthlessly enforced by hyperdimensional entities of blinding, lethal perfection. As explored in the theology of cosmic horror, there is absolutely no shelter to be found from the searing truth of ultimate judgment and salvation. Humanity is eternally trapped in a suffocating, cosmic crossfire between the terrifying mechanical perfection of the angelic host and the chaotic malice of the demonic realm. We are nothing more than the fragile, fleshy canvases upon which a massive war of metaphysical absolutes is violently painted across the stars, and the towering agents of our supposed salvation are just as alien and just as deeply dangerous to our fragile sanity as the very demons they are programmed to fight. The philosophical conclusion drawn from this exhaustive descent into the true nature of the divine is one of profound, inescapable, and suffocating existential dread. Now you finally understand why the human mind so desperately clings to the soothing image of the graceful, golden-haired warrior. Now you understand why we spent centuries constructing massive theological and artistic defense mechanisms, filling our grand cathedrals with beautiful marble statues and comforting Renaissance paintings. We did it because the alternative reality is biologically, structurally unbearable. To look upon the true Archangel Michael is to force your primitive eyes to look directly into the raw, unfiltered machinery of the cosmos. It is to finally, agonizingly realize that our ultimate guardian, the supreme protector of the human race, is an entity of multi-dimensional geometry, burning brass, and infinite, unblinking eyes, entirely devoid of a single, comforting drop of human empathy. He operates purely as a relentless, ticking engine of absolute obedience to an unfathomable creator, focused solely on the flawless preservation of a metaphysical order that we simply do not have the cognitive capacity to comprehend. In the end, as the comforting illusions of your childhood faith burn away into ash, the most terrifying realization is not that we are alone in the dark, floating blindly on a placid island of ignorance in a cold universe. The true, mind-shattering horror is that we are absolutely not alone at all. We are constantly being watched, meticulously guarded, and mathematically judged by an entity of blinding, radioactive light and absolute, unyielding will. He is waiting in the silent spaces between the stars with infinite, cold patience, ready to execute the precise algorithm of our salvation, or, if the cosmic variables ever shift, our sudden, silent, and permanent erasure. In his terrifying presence, traditional worship becomes entirely obsolete, replaced only by a primal, biological urge to hide. Because when you finally stand before the true Archangel Michael, your sanity is the very first thing to burn away. But here is the ultimate subversive irony hidden at the core of our prayers. We spend our entire lives begging the heavens for a perfect protector, a flawless guardian to shield us from the chaos and pain of the mortal world. Yet the very existence of Archangel Michael proves that absolute perfection is the most lethal force in the universe. We worship the beautiful, blinding light of salvation, completely ignoring the fact that a light this pure does not cast away the shadows. It simply incinerates whatever is casting them. We beg for a flawless cosmic system, forgetting that in a machine of absolute perfection, human flaws, human emotions, and human mistakes are the very definition of a virus. This is the exact same paradox driving our modern obsession with control and ambition. We relentlessly chase a perfect life, a perfect career, a mathematically optimized existence, desperately trying to strip away the messy, unpredictable emotions that make us human. We want to become the untouchable, emotionless mechanism of our own success, completely blind to the fact that when we finally achieve that cold, perfect efficiency, we erase the very humanity we were trying to elevate. So, as the cathedral doors close and you are left alone in the dark with the true nature of the cosmos, you are forced to answer one final question. Do you choose the comforting, beautiful lie of the golden-haired warrior who feels your pain? Or do you choose the mind-shattering, radioactive truth of the infinite cosmic machine? The architecture of the heavens is far darker and stranger than we were ever told. If you want to witness the next chapter of this hidden reality and survive the ancient truths they tried to bury, you know exactly what to do.